This is the next video explaining in detail the approach of creating artificial digital life. All previous videos are easily accessible by the playlist provided. This time we will have a look at how cells populate various habitats. In particular, we will address the question if we can find a specialization of organisms, that is, whether distinguished organisms will be dominant in specific spatial regions. This phenomenon is called annidation. Quoting Wikipedia on the term annidation, the adaptation of the various genotypes to different ecological niches, such as where a mutant form of a species is maintained in a population because it can flourish in a way that the parent organisms cannot. We will look at three different scenarios. The first one is rather simple. We are sticking to the same conditions as in the last videos, but provide more food. Quickly, we see many different genotypes evolve. Remember that genotypes are marked by colors. These different colors may look beautiful, but in line with Carl Sagan's quote before, extinction is the rule, survival is the exception. Most of these genomes and hence colors will disappear again. Because of the normal distribution of food as explained in the last videos and because we increase the food supply, there is a region in the center with an abundance of food. This region is populated with the initial green cells, that is, organisms without any genome for movement. In the past, we have always seen them disappear after a while because they could not compete with organisms which learned to move. In this scenario, though, they are bound to stay. They are not dying out because of food abundance, and by occupying the space, they will not allow other cells to take their position in space. Let's jump and see how the situation looks like after 100,000 cycles. There will be in total a bit more than 186,000 cells. The majority are the initial green cells without a genome. Roughly 71,000 cells and hence representing more than 38% of all cells. The next biggest population are 63,600 yellowish cells, that is more than 34% of all cells. They have quite an elaborated genome of 8 genes as shown in the picture. So we see annidation at work. The center region with a lot of food is inhabited by the green cells, but in the outer region where food is more scarce, a different species was established. In order to successfully survive, this species needed to develop a genome allowing for the search of food, so to say. We can even identify yet another example of annidation. The third biggest population, with a bit more than 11,000 cells of a dark green color, accounts for roughly 6% of all cells. This species has established itself even further from the center. Their genome provides a faster movement over the second species, allowing to survive in a region with even less food. Of course, there are more genomes around, but every other species represents less than 5% of the overall population. Let's move to the second scenario. And this time we will use a different approach to establish distinguished regions. By blue lines, kind of walls, we are splitting the available space. Cells cannot move through these walls. Interestingly, very often cells die out in one of the two parts. The two simulations you see on the screen had exactly the same setup, and all parameters were exactly the same. The only difference was the seed for the random number generator. That is, the sequence of random numbers, for example needed for mutations, was different. One might expect that these random events, which come in big numbers, would even out, but it's not always so. In the simulation displayed at the top, all the cells in the right part of the world are dying out, whilst the cells in the left part establish a stable population. In the simulation displayed at the bottom, the situation is exactly the other way around. In this sense, evolution appears to be a chaotic system as known from physics. Not always cells are dying out in one part of the world. In this next simulation, again, all parameters are exactly the same, but the seed for the random generator. This time cells prosper in both parts of the world. Let's fast forward and check the situation after 65,000 cycles. After 65,000 cycles, we clearly see that spatially separated areas led to annidation. The left side is dominated by a yellow species accounting for 9,479 cells, and the right side is dominated by a blue species accounting for 8,454 cells. As you can see, their genomes differ. Analyzing their genomes carefully, we discover that in fact both genomes basically describe the same movement. This is not such a big surprise. Conditions in the left part of the world are identical with the conditions in the right part, so a convergent evolution could be expected. Apparently, these genomes are quite optimized for this situation. Fast forwarding to 500,000 cycles doesn't change the picture anymore. Let's move to the third scenario. This time we are providing some bigger habitat in the center, let's call it mainland, and two smaller ones which we will call islands. These islands are connected with the mainland by a narrow and winding corridor, so it will be hard for the cells to conquer these islands. As all initial cells are located on the mainland, they quickly populate that central region. Let's fast forward. After 25,000 cycles, the mainland is populated by a yellow species, and in fact, they will stay the dominant species there for the rest of the simulation. From time to time, organisms try to cross over to the islands. After 29,000 cycles, for the first time they succeed. Watch how cells move slowly through the corridor to the right island. Once they reach that island, life is exploding because a lot of food has accumulated there. But just as quick, life is collapsing again after food has been consumed. Nevertheless, one species survives and populates the island. Let's jump to cycle 144,600 to witness how the left island is conquered. Again, cells move through the corridor to the island, and again life is exploding. But this time life doesn't persist and the island stays void of cells. Fast forwarding again, because only after 336,000 cycles the island is finally successfully populated. Like last time, we see cells creeping through the corridor, see life exploding, but this time organisms are bound to stay on the island. Fast forwarding, we see these organisms change and evolve, and after 400,000 cycles a rather stable situation has been established. The mainland is dominated by the yellow species. These cells represent 93.5% of all cells. Their genome consists of 5 genes. On the islands there is less space and food, so the populations there are smaller. Nevertheless, there are clearly dominant species. The red cells on the left island have a genome of 4 genes. The cyan cells on the right island have a genome of 7 genes. As a conclusion, we can confirm that in our model, just like in nature, annidation takes place and we find different genomes in different habitats. In the next video, we will introduce predators, that is, cells gaining their energy by eating other cells. This should change the game, especially in the first scenario we have seen, where the green cells without genome basically lived forever due to the abundance of food. So stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe.